Gears of War was one of my favorite series of all time growing up. I remember back in 2006, I was about in 5th grade. I was still a little baby Junebug, and it just reminded me of games like, what is that game called? Battalion Wars, stuff like that. Very much like army kind of games. I remember my first experience with the trailer that came out for it. It's actually pretty well renowned as one of the best trailers of all time for video games.
Number 1, Gears of War.
No tomorrow.
It was actually really fucking depressing, and I love it. It's fantastic. My grandma, who watched me watch this trailer, saw my reaction, and then after school when I came back, I found the game just sitting on a table there. My brother explained to me that my grandma just thought I was being a good kid, so I deserved a little reward. Thanks, Grandma. It was actually one of my first cover-to-cover combat kind of shooter games, and one of my first over-the-shoulder shooter games where the entire game is just played over the shoulder. In terms of weaponry, the game is pretty simple, in which that you just play with the same guns you've been playing since the beginning of the game throughout most of the game. The weapons include the shotgun, the assault rifle, the pistol, and your grenade, along with a couple what they call power weapons. You know, you can find and pick up as you play the game. The campaign, the story of basically, look, there's a lot of fucking background, but basically we have to fight a bunch of these fucking monsters that start attacking us, okay? And now with a broken world, you're just desperately trying to fight back against pretty much hopeless odds. On top of that, you had a fucking wonderful multiplayer to play with along with the campaign. And they added a chainsaw to your gun. What the fuck? Okay, cool. And they implemented that in combat in the multiplayer. And you had your executions. My point being that everything that was cool in the solo game was implemented into the multiplayer game. Gears of War 2 takes place, I don't know, a couple of months after Gears of War 1, and pretty much the good guys have decided, okay, fine, we're gonna now fight the bad guys. We're gonna rally our troops. We're gonna get really big. We're gonna get really big stuff, and we're gonna go in there and we're gonna fuck them up because, you know, there's pretty much nothing else we can do. So they start digging their way into the Locust Horde because the Locusts live down below in the earth, and we're gonna fight them down there. And that's pretty much the premise of the second game. And one of my favorite things about the original trilogy of the Gears of War series is that every time a new one was released in the original trilogy was that something new came out every single time. The first one had executions. The second one added to those executions with more crazier fucking what the fuck kind of executions. The chainsaw. You can now dual chainsaw people. You would cross chainsaw blades and just, yeah, have to mash B, and that was implemented in multiplayer too. You can now pick up the people that you down and fucking use them as a meat shield and shoot and what the fuck? They just added more to the first game, and it was fantastic. More guns, bigger guns, crazy fucking situations in the campaign that made you go, what the fuck? Counter to the mood set in the first game where you were like, what are we fighting for? This is all hopeless. What's gonna happen? Back to, holy fuck, let's do it. Let's get in there. Hard, deep, and I'm gonna fucking like it. And they even added a fucking robot. They added a fucking robot to the... Oh, wait, no. You get my point. The second part of the game was just an overall improvement of the first game. Everything that was in the first game was just improved upon in the second game. And the multiplayer was just improved upon as well. It was still a little shitty, but it was better than the first one. Alright, on to the third. The third one! The third one is the epitome as the fucking peak of where this game was going. It's fucking great. Okay, so like the first one, okay, so the first one, you're desperate. The second one, you're fighting back. The third one, you're desperate again. And what happened was in the second one, you're fighting them in the city, you're fighting the locusts in the city, and then you realize that like the last thing you have to do is sink the city, destroy the place that you're defending so hard. The last bastion of humanity, you have to sink it and flood it and like allow the ocean to come in and like flood it. That way the locusts that are inside the earth, that live inside the earth, they can all die and drown and shit. And that's the premise of, that's what happened at the end of the second game, right? And then at the third game, pretty much all hope is gone. You're fucked. It's gone. Like now you're just surviving. Now the COG, the Coalition of Ordered Governments, which is the army, is just pretty much disbanded and gone. It's pretty much shit. It's all shit now. Everything is shit again. Way to go, everybody. So now you're just trying to survive, and so are the locusts, because basically there's like inside the earth like a goo that humanity now uses as energy. And that's what caused like a huge war in the beginning of the entire thing entirely. And it's causing mutations inside the locust. They start to mutate and start to go crazy. They stop calling them locust. They start calling them lambent. So now the locusts have to deal with humans and the lambent. So that's why they're struggling even more. So in the campaign, the locusts are now like turned pretty much like Mad Max kind of style. There's now robots in this game. There's like big robots. They even implemented it into the gameplay of the multiplayer. There's a level where you can actually play as the robot and choose the robot and pick the robot and fight with the robot. What the fuck? And in the second game, they had horde mode, which was okay. It was okay. It was fun. It was fun. You just fought a bunch of locusts with your buddies, and it's just great. It was just a good time. This third one comes out, says, yo, we're now fucking allowing you to fucking choose and like build shit, and it was just so fluid and so easy to do. You would just go in, kill locusts, buy shit, and they even added like they added more weapons. The retro lancer, you can charge with it, you can kill people with like, there's no more chainsaws. There's new adding more implementation of close quarters combat. The Gnasher, which was like the most powerful gun in the game, and everybody would only use that in multiplayer, was now had some actual competition with the Lancer, the assault rifle being improved upon and actually being useful. They would really try to balance out the game for everyone, and they really tried, and they fucking succeeded. There was way more executions now. In general, this game was just incredibly improved upon as a whole. It just kept getting better and better and better. And on top of all of this, there was a comic line of the game that detailed more of the story, and because most of the gameplay story didn't really explain the background of the locust and all that shit, you don't really need to. If you wanted to just find out about the main story and what's gonna happen, just play the games. There you go. And then the fourth one came out, and this one wasn't that good. Very much a cash grab from the original series. It's just pretty much just dragging on the name Gears of War at this point. It's just existing. The Locust just came back just to come back. That's it. There's no good reason for it. And you can really see what I'm talking about, what happens to the game if you just play the multiplayer of the game. I can't think of any improvements that were made on in the game. In terms of combat, the only thing they added was this weird grab over the cover system that they did, which nobody uses because it's slow and just ineffective. They took out the gigantic fucking robot, and you know how I told you how Horde was pretty much fluid and fun? They turned that into like a card-based system where you now had your own character, where you had to take time to like improve your character's stats and yada yada yada. It definitely strayed extremely far from what the game actually was. It didn't evolve, it didn't improve, it just changed. Some of the weapons there were even less weapons that you could really start off with and play with in the gameplay. There's really nothing more to talk. There's really nothing to talk about in the fourth installment of the game because they didn't do anything with the game. They just added more story, which sucks, to make more game. It didn't add any changes or anything to make it like, oh my god, this is an improved Gears of War. This is like cooler. This is cooler in a way. They actually took out stuff. And then in the fifth one, it's still just the fourth's multiplayer again because they didn't add any mechanics. They didn't make it funner. And that's pretty much the game.